up, guys? Paulie malignaggi for Paulie TV. Big PBC pay-per-view was over. Gervonta Davis defends his WBA lightweight title with a draw against Lamont Roach. And also an interesting undercard. Pacquiao beats Martyn in a close split decision. Saying the Martyn can't seem to get those close ones. And Antoine Russell dominates Valenzuela and wins the WBA 140-pound title. I guess I'll start on the undercard with where Sandor Martyn, you know, a lot of people are going to say, okay, they thought he won this fight. And it seems like he sometimes doesn't get those close ones. He got it against Mikey Garcia. He didn't get it against Teofimo, and he didn't get it here against Pacquiao. I do see where Martyn is obviously very, very capable. He's very, very crafty, and he's very, very skilled. But there's nothing explosive about him, nothing that catches your eye. And I feel like, I don't know what you guys think in the comments, but I feel like you got to at least go and show something that you're trying to win the round. I feel like Martyn is content leaving the rounds up in the air against other skilled fighters. Listen, when the guys can't match him, obviously he wins the rounds more easily and he gets the wins. But against high-level fighters, it's like he doesn't want to take that extra chance to really show. He doesn't want to explode with something that really is going to show, okay, I went for the win. I went and got the win. I feel like Pacquiao ended up getting the decision tonight because he was willing to show just a little bit more. He was trying to get off first. He was trying to be last with punching, and it didn't always work. Listen, you can make a case for Martyn winning the fight as you can make a case for Martyn winning all the big fights he's been in. But if you don't go for trying to show that you're that little oomph, that little extra, that little emphasis on trying to compose yourself and cement those rounds. If you're content with leaving them up in the air like that against other high level fighters, especially when you're coming in as the visiting fighter on the house promoter show, it's going to be hard to get those decisions. And it's like, if Martyn hasn't figured that out by now, and he's got to do that little bit of cementing in some of these rounds. And, you know, it's sometimes it could be also a psychological block. He's a very good fighter, I think, but it's just, I don't know, I didn't think he was robbed ultimately. I think it was a close fight. He could have got it, but if he didn't get it, I think that he also left some things on the table that he could have fed on that Pacquiao was giving him. Antoine Russell looked terrific, beating Valenzuela. He was actually an underdog in this fight and goes in as an underdog after losing the Pacquiao fight. And the fight previous to this, and just dominated Valenzuela. Really, really great performance by Antoine Russell, who himself, had been fighting Valenzuela, who, himself had been sort of getting some star accolades, winning a world championship, outclassing Pitbull Cruz, and, having had a pretty good resume from before. He had a loss to Edwin De Los Santos. He had a controversial decision that lost to Chris Colbert that he avenged with a knockout. So, Valenzuela sort of cemented himself as a pretty solid 140-pounder. Antoine Russell dominated this fight, and I think he really cemented himself in the 140-pound division with this emphatic performance, and it's going to be somebody that people are going to need to talk about in the 140-pound division. Possibly a Pacquiao Antoine Russell rematch to unify the titles. Who knows? I mean, 140 pounds is a good weight class. There's some fun fighters in there, but there's also big names like Devin, Haney, who I don't think wants to fight the top fighters. I think Haney has always been a guy who's trying to sell you names, but not trying to sell you the toughest fights. I'm not sure. I think that would be Haney against any of these guys will be a solid fight. I'd love to watch, but I don't think Haney is going to be apt to go in against any of them. He didn't even want to fight Sandor Martyn when he would and keep WBC title and defend against him. So I don't know what that's going to bring us. But let's move on to the main event. Gervonta Davis and Lamont Roach. Certainly, I think the draw controversial, but I think Lamont Roach wins the night. I think his performance wins the night. Here's the thing, though. Lamont Roach was always a solid fighter, solid fundamental, and I'm going to reiterate what I said before. Solid fundamental fighter. Nothing that wows you, though. No crazy speed, no crazy power. Just a solid fundamental fighter who's been well-schooled, well-taught, and well-balanced. And that's who he was tonight. His sense of positioning allowed him to catch and shoot in some spots. He had a mentally strong game plan in terms of he was trying to hold ground a lot and sort of back up Gervonta Davis. Davis still... when you really think about it, he ends up fighting a Lamont Roach, who's a 130-pound champion, been a perennial contender for about 10 years, finally won a world title. You bring him up in weight with all the lightweights, tough lightweights that are out there. You go outside the weight class to defend the title and get a smaller guy, which is something that he'd done already before with Garcia a couple of years back, the guy he fought before he fought Ryan Garcia. I don't know, man. I can't keep reiterating how disappointing Gervonta Davis has been as far as the resume is concerned. If this is about as manufactured a star as you can make, and anybody who is going to defend that is really got to get their groupie lenses checked, because I've never seen a guy with this many pay-per-view headliners have not a single Hall of Famer on his resume. Not a single win on Gervonta Davis's resume will make you look at it like, wow, like maybe Jose Pedraza is a rather solid one, but it was a struggling at the weight Jose Pedraza. It was a Jose Pedraza that had already been robbed Edna Cherry in a defense against Edna Cherry at that weight. So he was already weakening at 130 pounds, and he was already just holding on to that weight class because he had that belt. And as soon as he lost that belt, he went up to 135 and actually started fighting better once he could, make the weight a little bit easier. So that's his best win, and even that's with an asterisk. Ryan Garcia, you put the weight rehydration clause, and even Ryan, we still don't really know how good he is. He's never been a world champion. As manufactured a star fighter as you can make here, man. I mean, he was actually looked happy. He didn't even look disappointed with the decision tonight, with his performance tonight. This is how much. When you spoil a guy and you give him this much free money, and it's not just happened with him. I thought it happened with Devin Haney too, who then he stepped in, had the bad luck of running into the Ryan Garcia situation with that, but that's another story altogether. But it's like when you don't prepare by giving a backbone to your character with tough fights on the way up and tough fights to sort of cement your legacy and cement your status, then when you end up having trouble with fights you shouldn't have trouble with, and that can't happen, because you end up with tonight Gervonta Davis ended up with a really, really motivated Lamont Roach, who was obviously, like I said, always rather solid, but still was a smaller guy and still had nothing super special about him, and didn't really show anything super special tonight. Just sense of positioning, mentally strong, holding ground, catching and shooting, and honestly backed up Gervonta Davis a lot. Ultimately, I don't think the draw is the worst decision in the world. I think, obviously Lamont overperformed here, or at least the look is that he overperformed. But I'll tell you where robbery can come into play. Two scorecards were even. There's a knockdown not given to Lamont Roach. Gervonta took a knee on his own. Let's remember when Mayweather did this against Carlos Famoso Hernandez years ago when his hand hurt, the referee counted him. So that was counted as a knockdown. Steve Willis is supposed to count that as a knockdown. And if Steve Willis counts that as a knockdown, Lamont wins by 1 point on 2 scorecards. And that knee that Gervonta Davis took ends up becoming the difference on the scorecards. I don't think a draw is the worst result in the world. I will say this. There are at least 6-7 lightweights that are better than Lamont Roach. I mean, I would pick Edwin De Los Santos to beat Lamont Roach. At lightweight. I would pick Zepeda, Tevin Farmer. I would pick Murataya, and obviously the champions, Shakur Stevenson and Keyshawn Davis. Even Baranchik and Lamont Roach would be a solid matchup. So it's not like we went and picked like out of a weak division we had to go get Lamont Roach for this fight. He went and got Lamont Roach with a cherry pick, and the minus 1,600 odds on the money line before the main event started was the proof that it was a cherry pick. And yet Lamont overperformed, and Gervonta showed again that it makes you wonder, is he that guy? I mean, because like I said, he has no resume to speak of. This is a guy who's almost 30 years old, speaks like he's accomplished what Muhammad Ali accomplished, talking like he's going to retire because he's done everything. He's actually done nothing except become a manufactured champion. So I don't know, man. I mean, I know I've complained about Canelo also doing this, but at least there was a time when Canelo actually gave us the chase for some of the top fighters in and around his weight classes. Even if, whatever, even if I'm not happy with what Canelo does now, there was a time when Canelo was at least doing that, And I don't agree that Canelo does it with belts even now, but at least it's not as bad as this guy. This guy literally never has chased the top guy in his weight class. Can you say that there's a fight Gervonta Davis has had where you say, oh, that's the best guy in the weight class, and Gervonta Davis went and chased him and made it? Shakur Stevenson, even in it with injured hands, probably would have beat him tonight, Keyshawn Davis would have beat him tonight for sure. Edwin De Los Santos, I think, would have beat him tonight. People forget about De Los Santos. Like, nobody has actually gone near him since the Shakur Stevenson fight. And De Los Santos is a winner of Valenzuela as well. I love the politics of boxing. You guys just get phased out just for being too good. It's wild. Only in this sport can that happen, mind you. Speaking of Shakur, he actually tweeted that if Lamont Roach cannot get a decision against Gervonta Davis, he would fight Lamont Roach. And that's interesting because then you get a comparable, but I think Lamont probably has to go back to 130 pounds and make at least one defense of the 130-pound title before he can keep coming at lightweight, because you can't just keep a title hostage. I mean, granted, they let you do whatever you want nowadays, But I wouldn't want Lamont to keep the 130-pound title hostage and continue to fight at lightweight. I would like for Lamont Roach maybe to go get a defense at 130 pounds, keep cementing himself as a 130-pound champ, because he's solid at 130 pounds. You know, that's his weight class. He's solid, and I think this performance also adds a lot of shine to him, to his reputation that he has, and you know, a lot of doors open for him. So we'll see in that regard where it goes. Where does Gervonta Davis go from here? Does he give a rematch to Lamont Roach? I think it's about time that Gervonta Davis is forced to fight the top lightweights in the world so that he can finally have that title taken away that he's been keeping hostage for a while. And there are a lot of top lightweights in the world. The lightweight division is not devoid of talent, where you got to go search for other weight classes for top opposition. I would love for Davis to fight one of the other champions. I would love for Davis to fight a viable major lightweight contender, because even those kind of guys are tough. We'll see what happens. All right. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Who did you have winning the fight tonight? What did you think of Lamont Roach's performance? Where does Lamont Roach go from here? Because I think he becomes the talk of the town right now. You know, I think, like I said, the draw was what the result was, but Lamont Roach wins the night tonight. And of course, Gary Antoine Russell, a great undercard performance with an upset win over Valenzuela, and Pacquiao winning a close one against Sandor Martin. I'm Paulie Malignaggi. This is Paulie TV.